Alright, guys. So I'm going to be starting a new series today. This will be on the gospel, the complete message. And this is probably going to take two parts to get this entire thing done. So first, I actually give me 1 second. Okay. First things first, what I want to explain, and I've already gotten it written up here on the board, is what does the word gospel actually mean? If you look up the definition of gospel, the word, it means good news. And what you're hearing in churches today is people mixing good news with everything else they've heard in the Bible. Or they're mixing, again, good news with good news for someone else. There's different gospels in the Bible, and I looked this up. There's many verses that have the word gospel in it. There's verses in Matthew, Mark, Luke, Acts. There's verses all over the Bible that mention the word gospel. But it is all, just remember that the word gospel means good news. This does not all mean the same thing. We're not all hearing, when they mention the word gospel, it doesn't mean the same thing in every book. It changes. In one book, the gospel may be what it says there, but when you get to Paul's books, the gospel is something entirely different. And that's why I want to prove today that the gospel that is being preached in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, is something known as the gospel of the kingdom, while the gospel that is being preached by Paul is the gospel to the uncircumcision, which would be us, to the gospel to the Gentiles. So I'm going to be going over that today. So, for example, I put up here, whose gospel should we listen to? Paul. And why should we listen to Paul the Apostle over anyone else in the Bible? Because he's the only apostle sent specifically to the Gentiles. I want to show you those verses. So we're going to go to Acts 22, 21. Let me get my Bible. Acts chapter 22, verse 21. And he sent to me, depart, for I will send thee far hence to the Gentiles. Let's go back up to 14 and read down to 21 so you can get some context. And he said, the God of our fathers hath chosen thee, that thou shouldest know his will, and see that just one, and shouldest hear the voice of his mouth. For thou shalt be his witness to all men of what thou hast seen and heard. And now why tarriest thou? Arise and be baptized, and wash away thy sins, calling on the name of the Lord. And it came to pass that even when I was come again to Jerusalem, even while I prayed in the temple, I was in a trance. I saw him saying to me, make haste and get thee quickly out of Jerusalem, for they will not receive thy testimony concerning me. And I said, Lord, they know that I imprisoned and beat in every synagogue them that believed on thee. And when the blood of thy martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by and consented to his death, and kept the resentment of them and slew him. Raiment kept the raiment of them and that slew him. And he said to me, depart, for I will send thee for hence to the Gentiles. So again, he's clearly saying Jesus Christ is telling him to go to the Gentiles. So Paul is specifically being sent to the Gentiles. Did Peter preach to a Gentile? Yes. But that is different. I just want to make that that note in here. Peter speaking to a Gentile is different than Paul specifically being chosen only to go to the Gentiles. Now, does that mean he didn't go to the Jews? Of course he went to the Jews. He went to the Jews as well. But the point is primarily, he was chosen to be the apostle to the Gentiles. For the for Jerusalem, for the Jewish nation, the disciples, the gospel of the kingdom that preached was only, like I said in other videos, they were only speaking to the Jews, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. They were only speaking to them. They were never sent to the Gentiles. Even though Peter preached to Cornelius, who was a Gentile, that was different than being specifically sent now primarily to be sent to the nation of the Gentiles. It's different. And again, Cornelius converted to being a Jew. It wasn't simply he was talking to him, giving him a different gospel than what he was preaching. He gave Cornelius the gospel of the kingdom. And when Cornelius believed it and he got baptized and did all that, he became a Jew, a spiritual Jew. God saw him as a Jew spiritually. But again, like I told you, if you were a Gentile during that time period, you went to the nation of Israel. And again, there's a lot of things in the Bible that show. Give me 1 second, guys. Wow. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of things that actually show foreshadowings of things. How Peter going to Cornelius the Gentile, I believe, is a foreshadowing of what was to come, of how Jesus Christ was eventually going to go completely, exclusively to the Gentiles. That was just that little transition of Peter going to the Gentiles. That had never been done before. So again, it was showing God was transitioning, changing. And a lot of people don't like change. A lot of people don't like to hear that God can change his program. But that's simply the truth. That is what God can do. God can choose at any point in time to end a dispensation, which is rules, instructions in a time period, and switch to something else, if it's according to his word. So that is just what I want to explain. So, I mean, for example, right now, we're in the dispensation of grace, but at any point in time, that can end with the catching away of the saints. Everyone that's in the body of Christ will be called away to meet the Lord in the air. I'll be doing an upcoming video after I get done with the gospel videos I'm going to be doing. This is going to be 2. Then I'll start that video on what exactly is it to be caught away to meet God in the air. A lot of people don't believe in actually being raptured away, being snatched away. Because yes, the word rapture is not in the Bible, but the Bible clearly shows we will not be here to go through the tribulation. And I'm going to get into that on a different note. But I just want to show how that ends. Us being caught away will end that dispensation that we're in right now, and a new dispensation will be started. New instructions in a time period God will give to the world. So, just want to prove to you right there, without a shadow of doubt, Paul is your apostle and is specifically sent to the Gentiles. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 3, chapter 1 through 2. Hopefully my camera won't fall again. All right. Okay, Ephesians chapter 3. Okay. For this cause I, Paul, the prisoner of Jesus Christ, for you Gentiles. So again, another thing where he's saying specifically Gentiles. If ye have heard the dispensation of the grace of God which is given me to youward. It was given to him to give to us. All right, so let's go to Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11, verse 13. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine own office. So again, he says he speaks to the Gentiles. That's it, just very clear. Doesn't even say the word Jews or anything like that. Did he go to the Jews? Of course. But the point is, primarily, he is the apostle to the Gentiles. Okay, so this brings me to another verse where I want to clearly show you that, because a lot of people somehow think that the disciples became the body of Christ, and I made this mistake too when I was first starting out, but they did not. They kept their gospel, and we have our gospel. That's just it. Two different pieces of good news. You know, one is good news for the Gentiles, that's us, and the other is good news for the circumcision, which Peter, the little flock, is a part of. I'm going to show you that verse. So if you go to Galatians chapter 2, and it's going to be verse 7. Galatians chapter 2, verse 7. And let's actually start. We'll just start on chapter 2 and read that entire part for context. Then 14 years after I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, and took Titus with me also, and I went up by revelation and communicated to them that gospel which I preached among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised, and that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privily to spy out our liberty which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. But of these who seem to be somewhat whatsoever they were, it maketh no matter to me. God accepteth no man's person. For they who seemed to be somewhat in conference added nothing to me. But contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed to me, as the gospel of the circumcision was to Peter. So I want to show you guys there how. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna have to write this verse down for you. This is such a big verse. It actually is showing you Paul is telling you a difference right there. So people that are saying that Paul and Peter preached the same gospel are clearly wrong. The Bible proves that they're wrong. Anyone that still thinks they spoke the same gospel, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, you have to be blindly believing this because the Bible proves that you're wrong. All right, Galatians. Okay, so let's underline some stuff here. Now this is plain and simple. The verse says it. When they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision, so that's good news of the uncircumcision, was committed to me. That's Paul. You know, we know Paul is the one speaking. As the gospel of the circumcision was to Peter. These are two different gospels. They're not the same. You cannot believe the gospel of the circumcision is to you and believe the gospel of the uncircumcision is to you. You see how this is not possible? You have no choice but to choose. Even if you don't even understand the Bible, you would have no choice but to choose which one. I was speaking to a person the other day, like I told you, that blatantly said, well, I choose to believe John. And I was like, well, I mean, you're wrong. John is not your apostle. He's not the one sent to you. I just proved to you Paul is. So I just thought that was very interesting. Let's keep reading. This is 8. Galatians chapter 2, verse 8. For he that wrought effectively in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles. Again, showing a difference. And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go to the heathen. So they were in agreement. You see what I'm saying? Peter and let me see this. James, Cephas, and John, Peter's will, they perceived the grace that was given to Paul. They gave him the right hand of fellowship. And they decided that Paul and Barnabas should go to the heathen. And they to the circumcision. So I want to kind of put a diagram up here so you can see what I'm saying. So I hope you guys can see this. Paul and Barnabas went to the uncircumcision, the heathen, Gentiles. Cephas, John, and James went to the circumcision. The circumcision is not heathen and Gentiles. You see that division line I put there? Circumcision is not these guys. You can't mix the two. Now, if you were a Gentile that went to the nation of Israel, converted over, you blessed Israel, you got baptized, you did everything that the Jews did, then you're part of the circumcision. You're part of the circumcision. That was you. God saw you as a spiritual Jew. But if you're a Gentile, Paul and Barnabas went to you. You're Gentiles. You're heathen. You're the uncircumcision. Literally. I mean, we all know what circumcision is. They are literally the uncircumcision. These guys are literally circumcised. I mean, you see what I'm saying? An uncircumcised person is not the same as a circumcised person. It's two different. They're different physically. So, I'm not trying to get too graphic on here, but I'm just trying to show you the division. So, Paul is to us. James, John, Peter. I didn't put Peter in here, but all the 12 disciples, I didn't put all the 12 disciples. They're on that side. I just put Cephas, John, and James just because of this verse. They went to the circumcision. Paul and Barnabas went to us. Again, two different messages, two different destinations. You cannot mix this up. If you do, you're not getting the correct gospel. Okay, so I made this as clear. I can't make this any clearer than that, guys. I really can't. This is just as clear as I can make it. Anybody else that just doesn't get this, you're not getting this because you don't want to get it. And that's fine. You'll stand in front of God one day. And you can tell him then why you couldn't get it. All right. Man, let's keep reading. I find this very interesting. And I'm not going to write any of this up on the board, but if you want to just follow with me. Let's go to start with Galatians chapter 2, verse 11. And this is interesting. Paul has a charge against Peter. I'm going to start with Galatians chapter 2, verse 11. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. So Peter's being blamed for something. 12. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. So he's eating with the Gentiles. But when the circumcision came, he went ahead and separated himself, afraid of what they was going to say. 13. And the other Jews disassembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissummation. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? He's literally asking him a question. He's saying, why are you trying to compel these Gentiles to live like the Jews? Which is, ironically, that's what's happening today. 15. We who are Jews by nature are not sinners of the Gentiles, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith of Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. But if, while we seek to be justified by Christ, we ourselves also are found sinners, is therefore Christ the minister of sin? God forbid. For if I build again the things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. For I through the law am dead to the law. Paul is saying he's dead to the law, that I might live to God. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. Again, this whole verse, you can see Peter is mixing himself up. He's eating with the Gentiles, being with them, and he's not supposed to be doing that. He's to the circumcision. That's just the way it was. They didn't eat with Gentiles. But for whatever reason, Peter was doing that. And Peter was also trying to get the Gentiles to live as the Jews. Again, the Bible literally, when you read this, is stressing separation, division. That's just the way it is. There's no mixing things up. There's no mixing things up. You were either in the circumcision or you were in the uncircumcision. That's just the way it was. What people today are trying to blur this line. That's why they don't understand what's going on. They don't even know who their apostle is. So, Paul, we're Gentiles. That's it. That's it, guys. And no, nobody today knows if they're Jew or not. It doesn't matter. Are there Jews today? Real Jews today? Yes, but who knows who the real Jews are? The real Jews, honestly, are not the people occupying that land. We don't know who the real Jews are. I can tell you right now, we're all this. We're all in the dispensation of grace. I know I'm a Gentile as far as I understand, but even if you are a Jew, it doesn't matter. You're still over here because the Jews have fallen. You're no longer the circumcision. See what I'm saying? Okay. So that's going to end it for today, guys. I want to make these only 30 minutes. And tomorrow, I'll definitely be giving the actual gospel. I actually put the gospel out here. But I just wanted to get you guys thinking today, because some of you are listening to John. You know, the book in the Bible that says the Gospel of John. When I prove to you without a shadow of a doubt, that gospel, that good news is not for you. It's not for you. John is to the circumcision. Paul, uncircumcision, Gentiles, heathen, us. You have to divide. Just because that's in the Bible, you can read it, that's fine, but that information is not pertaining to you and will not do anything for you. So, I hope you guys found that. I hope it edified you. I hope you learned something new today that you didn't know. And that's it. Tomorrow we'll be coming with the with part 2. So look forward to that. And after, again, I'm done with giving the gospel in these 2-part videos, I'll go ahead and start some videos pertaining to the catching away of the saints. That might be a 2-part video, and then I'll do it. I'm going to do an exposed video. I'll be exposing I cannot remember her name. It's Renee something. I just can never remember her last name. I really can't. Man. But all right, guys. Have a great day.